polished mahogany doors of the boardroom loomed large before me, a portal to a battlefield where alliances would fracture and truths would shatter the facades we had all so carefully constructed. As I stepped inside, the cool air prickling my skin, a singular tremor coursed through my hand, betraying the calm mask I wore. The folder I clutched contained not just documents, but the distilled essence of betrayal and the promise of justice. Lydia was already seated, her fingers tapping nervously against the sleek surface of the conference table. Her eyes, once a source of warmth and affection, widened at the sight of the folder. Her gasp was almost imperceptible, but to me, it echoed through the silence like a confession. Across from her sat Richard, the CEO whose charm had once seemed benign. Now his complexion paled to the shade of parchment, as if anticipating the storm I was about to unleash. A click resonated in the room as I pressed send on my phone, setting in motion the cascade of revelations that would soon ripple through their world. Emails, financial records, images, each piece of evidence a tiny puzzle that together painted a picture of deceit and ambition, infidelity and betrayal. I watched as their faces contorted, confronting the sudden unraveling of their carefully spun illusions. Time seemed to pause, the chaos around me receding into a haze. The scene froze, suspended in its intensity, as I allowed myself a moment of reflection. How had it come to this? How had the love we built crumbled into such ruin? Our lives had begun with innocence, with dreams shared over whispered conversations and fleeting glances. And yet, here we were, strangers bound by a history now tainted by secrets. The folder trembled in my grip, a testament to the weight of the choices I had made, choices born from wounds inflicted by those I once trusted most. It was both a weapon and a shield, a silent witness to the path I'd forged from victim to victor. And within its pages, I saw not just the betrayal that shattered my world, but the strategic mind I'd unearthed in response. A mind honed by necessity and fueled by the fire of vengeance. As they scrambled to contain their crumbling empire, I stood apart, the eye of the storm I had created. Lydia's voice, usually so composed and soothing, was a frantic whisper now, beseeching Richard with words I couldn't hear but could easily imagine. Pleas for salvation, for explanations, for the impossible task of restoring what they had irreparably damaged. Richard's confidence, once a fortress of charisma, was now a crumbling facade, his eyes darting for an escape that did not exist. He had underestimated me, dismissed the quiet strength I carried beneath my skin, mistaking it for mere passivity. Now, his empire teetered on the brink of collapse, and my presence in this room was the catalyst for a reckoning he could no longer evade. Their downfall had been meticulously orchestrated, every step a calculated move in a game only I knew we were playing. And yet, as I watched the consequences of their betrayal unfold, I felt a flicker of something unexpected, a twinge of empathy, a sliver of regret. It was the echo of the love that had once defined us, now transformed into something unrecognizable but never entirely erased. In this moment, suspended in time, I understood that revenge was a double-edged sword, its satisfaction tempered by the inevitable loss it carried. I had achieved my triumph, but at what cost? I was both architect and victim, hero and antagonist in a story that was as much about redemption as it was about retribution. The air in the boardroom was charged, vibrating with the tension of unveiled truths and unspoken accusations. I breathed it in, letting it fill my lungs and fortify my resolve. Though this chapter was nearing its end, the narrative lingered in my veins, a reminder that every choice, every betrayal, every act of vengeance was a thread in the larger tapestry of our lives. As the weight of the folder grew lighter in my hands, my thoughts drifted to the future, to the possibilities that awaited beyond this room and its fractured relationships. I'd learned in the crucible of my suffering that true strength lay not just in the act of revenge, but in the capacity to rebuild anew. And so, as the chaos began to resolve into silence, I stood in the center of my own creation, poised at the cusp of a new beginning. The memory of that tense boardroom encounter lingered like a specter as I sat at our breakfast table, a place once filled with warmth and laughter. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the morning light streaming through the kitchen windows, painting a picture of routine and familiarity. Lydia hummed softly as she poured herself a cup, her every movement a dance I had once cherished. But today that melody felt tainted, a discordant note in the symphony of our lives. I watched her, studying the way her hair fell over her shoulders, the graceful arc of her neck. Her smile, directed at me, was warm, yet something beneath it suggested a practiced ease. The laughter that used to flow so effortlessly between us now felt like a performance, a masquerade hiding truths unspoken. Yet, in these stolen moments, I allowed myself to remember what once was, how we crafted dreams over shared sips of coffee, each plan a thread in the tapestry of our shared future. Lydia reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine, and for a fleeting moment, the touch was electric. But the magic was short-lived, dissipating like the steam rising from our mugs. Guilt flickered in her eyes. I could see it even as she tried to mask it with feigned joy. Her whispered, "I love you," was a plea, a desperate attempt to cling to what we both knew was slipping away. As I left for work, she enveloped me in a lingering embrace, her arms holding me tighter than usual. I closed my eyes, absorbing the sensation, wondering if she could feel the turmoil roiling beneath my skin. Her warmth lingered even as I stepped out into the world, but it was a false comfort, a reminder of the love now marred by shadows. The city bustled around me, indifferent to the inner conflict I carried. At the office, I went through the motions, my mind a storm of thoughts and suspicions. A family photo on my desk caught my eye. Lydia and I, arms wrapped around each other, smiles radiant and unconcealed. How had we fallen so far from that image of happiness? The frame felt heavy in my hands, a relic of a time when our world was whole and unmarred by betrayal. I cast my mind back to the dinner party we hosted not long ago. Friends gathered in our home, laughter bubbling like champagne as toasts were raised to love and success. I remembered Lydia's hand in mine, the warmth of her gaze as she talked animatedly with our guests, the way she had held me close, whispering her love with a sincerity that now seemed lost. It was all so perfect, an illusion expertly crafted, yet within it lay the seeds of our undoing. That night, as the city dimmed under a blanket of stars, I lay awake beside her, listening to the soft rhythm of her breathing. I wanted to reach out, to bridge the chasm that had grown between us, but fear held me in place. Fear of confronting truths that would shatter the fragile peace we clung to. Fear of the unknown path that lay ahead, where trust had been irrevocably broken. Days turned into weeks, and the changes in Lydia became more pronounced. Her laughter seemed hollow, her attentions distracted. I noticed the new necklace she wore, a delicate band of silver that I hadn't gifted. When questioned, she dismissed it as a gift from a friend, her eyes evasive and distant. It was a small thing, yet it spoke volumes. Her phone, once left carelessly on the counter, now seemed to be her constant companion. Late-night messages illuminated her face in the dark, her giggles a soft betrayal echoing in the silence of our bedroom. I watched from the shadows, my heart heavy with suspicion, fear, and a burgeoning resolve to uncover the truth. The unraveling began at a corporate event, where the glitz and glamour of the evening camouflaged the tension simmering beneath the surface. It was there that I first noticed the connection between Lydia and Richard, the CEO who had charmed his way into our lives. Their conversation was too intimate, their laughter shared with a familiarity that made my skin prickle. A misplaced dinner reservation, his name scrawled alongside hers, became the thread I couldn't ignore. The idyllic life I cherished had become a facade, its cracks now impossible to ignore. The family photo on my desk mocked me with its portrayal of unity and happiness, a stark reminder of what was at stake. The visions of our perfect life served as fuel for my determination, a determination to regain control, to reclaim the narrative of my own story. As I stood on the precipice of revelation, I found myself at a crossroads. The love I once held so dear was now a tangled web of deceit and betrayal. Yet, beneath the layers of anger and hurt, a flicker of hope persisted, a hope for redemption, for healing, for the strength to rise from the ashes of our shared past. And so, with a heart heavy yet resolute, I stepped forward, ready to confront the storm and forge a new beginning. A beginning that would be born from truth, from justice, from the burning desire to reclaim the future that had been stolen from me. The necklace glinted in the morning light, a delicate chain that seemed to mock me with its presence. Lydia wore it with a casual elegance that belied its significance, her fingers idly tracing its path along her collarbone as we stood together at the breakfast table. I could feel my pulse quicken, the intensity of my suspicions magnified by the aura of deception that clung to her every move. "Who gave you that?" My voice sounded foreign, even to my own ears, hoarse, a fragile veneer over the storm inside. Lydia hesitated, a fleeting moment of uncertainty before she met my gaze, her smile a practiced mask. "Oh, just a friend," she replied, her voice smooth and untroubled. The ease with which she dismissed it only fed the tempest within me, raising the stakes in a game I had unwittingly entered. The rest of our morning routine passed in a blur of mundane motions, each gesture laced with the undercurrents of unspoken truths. As Lydia left for work, the subtle tension that had woven itself into the fabric of our lives lingered like a shadow, a constant reminder of all that was hidden beneath the surface. At the office, my thoughts were a cacophony of doubts and theories, each one clamoring for attention. I knew the signs were there, scattered like breadcrumbs leading to an inevitable conclusion. Yet my mind rebelled against the finality of such a revelation. Love had a way of blinding us to the truths we feared most, wrapping us in a cocoon of shared memories and imagined futures. The corporate event that evening was a dazzling affair, the air heavy with the aroma of expensive cologne and the clinking of crystal glasses. The room buzzed with conversation and laughter. Yet within me, the noise receded, replaced by the acute awareness of Lydia's presence. She was radiant, her laughter bright and unrestrained as she moved through the crowd, her charm a weapon as sharp as any blade. It was then that I saw them, Lydia and Richard, their heads bent close in conversation. Their smiles were too familiar, their laughter a shared secret that pierced through the carefully curated ambience of the evening. I watched, my gut twisting as they exchanged a glance that lingered a fraction too long, spoke words that needed no voice. A waiter passed by, offering champagne with a practiced grace, and I accepted a glass, letting the cool liquid slide down my throat. The flute trembled slightly in my grip, a mirror to the tremors running beneath my skin. Richard's charm had always seemed innocuous, a harmless allure that drew others into his orbit, but now it glistened like a snare set to catch the unwary. As the night wore on, I found myself drifting closer to their orbit, pulled by a magnetic force that defied reason. It was there, caught in the flickering glow of candlelight, that I discovered the misplaced dinner reservation, a scrap of paper with Richard's name entwined with Lydia's. My heart stuttered, a beat misaligned as I fingered the evidence of their familiarity, the thread that threatened to unravel the tightly wound fabric of our lives. The necklace, the stolen glances, the private jokes, they were pieces of a puzzle that revealed a picture I was loath to see. A portrait of betrayal painted with the brushstrokes of intimacy and deceit, its colors vivid and unforgiving. Yet, as much as it pained me, there was a clarity that came with its unveiling, a sense of purpose that sparked to life in the midst of my turmoil. The weeks that followed were a dance of observation and investigation, my every move calculated in the pursuit of truth. Lydia, caught in her own web of lies, remained unaware of the careful scrutiny to which she was now subjected. While her phone danced with the notifications of late-night messages, I forged a path through the labyrinth of our shared existence, each step bringing me closer to the heart of the deception that had taken root in our lives. Every detail, every interaction became a piece of the narrative I was constructing, a story that demanded to be told. It was a narrative fueled by the cold fire of betrayal, yet tempered by the hope for redemption, a path I was determined to follow, no matter the cost. And so, armed with resolve and a growing arsenal of truths, I stood ready to confront the tangled web of love and deceit that had ensnared us. The necklace shimmered like a beacon in the darkness of our shared history, a symbol of the unraveling yet to come. As the weight of my suspicions coalesced into certainty, I realized that the time for confrontation was near. In the quiet of the night, as Lydia lay beside me, her breathing gentle and untroubled, I whispered a silent promise to the shadows, an oath to uncover the truth, to reclaim the love that had once been ours, and to chart a new course through the wreckage of our past. The digital glow of Lydia's email account illuminated my study, casting eerie shadows across the walls, as if mirroring the hidden deceptions it held. My fingers danced over the keyboard with a dexterity born of desperation, uncovering layer by layer the correspondence that had remained buried beneath passwords and false securities. Each click was a revelation, a step deeper into the abyss of betrayal that threatened to consume the remnants of our lives. The notes exchanged between Lydia and Richard were both intimate and transactional, a blend of affectionate promises and strategic plans that left a bitter taste in my mouth. My heart clenched with each revelation, the words on the screen scalding like acid, expressions of love I had once believed were mine alone, now shared with another. In the quiet sanctuary of my study, I installed a camera, its lens a silent witness to the unfolding tragedy. The footage it captured was irrefutable, a tender moment shared when they believed themselves unseen, an embrace that shattered the illusion of possibility between us. I watched Lydia's familiarity with Richard, the way her fingers trailed over his arm with a tenderness I had thought reserved for me alone. My world, once a tapestry of shared dreams, had become a battlefield strewn with the debris of love and lies. Yet, within the rubble, a fierce determination flickered, fueled by the need for justice, for retribution, for a reckoning that was long overdue. The hotel lobby was dimly lit, shadows pooling in corners as patrons came and went, their footsteps echoing along the polished floor. I stood, my heart a relentless drum in my chest, watching from afar as Lydia entered, her demeanor a mix of caution and excitement. She scanned the crowd, her expression softening when Richard approached, his presence a magnet that drew her in. I remained on the periphery, an unseen phantom, my eyes fixed on the pair as they greeted each other with a familiarity that twisted the knife of betrayal deeper into my soul. The pain sharpened my resolve, turning it into an unyielding force that urged me forward, beyond the threshold of my own hesitation. With each step Lydia took towards Richard, the betrayal became an indelible mark upon our history, a scar that could not be erased. I watched until they disappeared into the elevator, their conspiracy sealed behind the closing doors. It was in that moment, as the elevator numbers blinked out of sight, that I understood the path before me with stark clarity. The private investigator was an unassuming man, his eyes sharp and perceptive, accustomed to the undercurrents that lay beneath the surface of domestic facades. He listened as I laid out my suspicions, nodding with the quiet assurance of someone who had traversed these emotional landscapes before. His promise to gather evidence was a balm to my aching heart, a lifeline in the tumultuous sea of my emotions. As the days turned into nights, my world narrowed to the point of obsession, each new piece of evidence a step closer to the truth. My study became a war room, maps of deceit and betrayal spread out before me, each connection a thread in the web that Lydia and Richard had spun. Yet, alongside the pain, a newfound strength emerged, a clarity of purpose I hadn't known I possessed. The footage, the emails, the hotel meetings, they were more than just evidence. They were the components of a narrative I was finally ready to confront. My life had been thrown off course, but in the detritus of the lies, I found the compass I needed, pointing unerringly towards justice. In the quiet of the night, as Lydia slept unsuspecting beside me, I reviewed the evidence one last time. The camera's footage looped in silence, an unrelenting reminder of the path ahead. Every detail was a testament to the world I had lost and the resolve gained in its stead. With a heart steeled by betrayal and a spirit forged by the flames of vengeance, I stepped out into the night, leaving the safety of unknowing behind. The truths I had uncovered would no longer be confined to the shadows. They would bask in the light of day, demanding to be acknowledged. As I walked into the darkness, the necklace caught the moonlight, a beacon of the deception I was poised to dismantle. In that moment, I understood that the road to redemption was paved with the stones of truth, each step a testament to the love that was, the pain that is, and the justice that would be. The journey toward retribution was far from over, but the path was clear. Each revelation was a catalyst, driving me toward the inevitable confrontation, where love and betrayal would meet, and where I would find the strength to reclaim my future from the ruins of the past. The truth lay between us, a chasm I could no longer ignore. Lydia sat before me, her eyes pleading, words dying on her lips. The study, once a sanctuary of shared dreams, was now a battleground for the confrontation that had been brewing for weeks. Silence hung heavy in the air, punctuated only by the rhythmic ticking of the clock, counting down the moments left in our fractured lives. I held the evidence in my hands, a collection of digital whispers, hidden glances, and tender moments captured on grainy film. With a quiet resolve, I laid each piece before her, the weight of my betrayal fully visible. Her eyes widened, panic flashing across them as she reached for the fragments of our life now laid bare. "Why, Lydia?" My voice was steady, though my insides trembled with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. "Why did you risk everything we built?" Her gaze dropped, shame coloring her cheeks. It was a stark contrast to the confident woman I once knew, now reduced to a figure struggling against the tide of her own actions. I don't know," she stammered, the words coming out like a broken plea. "Things just got out of hand." I felt my composure slipping, the cracks in my voice betraying the storm within. "You don't know?" I echoed bitterly. "You had everything, Lydia. We had everything." My words struck like arrows, each one an accusation she couldn't deflect. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling over in silent streams. Her vulnerability was a painful reminder of the love we once shared, now twisted beyond recognition. "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered, the sincerity in her voice laced with desperation. "I was lost, Jack. Richard, he was..." Richard. The name came out like a curse, venomous and bitter on my tongue. "You chose him over us, over what we had." The accusation hung in the air, its truth undeniable, yet somehow still unbelievable. Lydia's sobs grew louder, her defenses crumbling under the weight of the evidence between us. "It was a mistake," she cried, reaching out as if to bridge the unbridgeable. "I love you, Jack. Please, believe me." But I couldn't. The love she professed was now tainted, a ghost of what it once was. The room spun with memories, of laughter, of kisses, of whispered promises now shattered like glass. I felt the anger surge within me, a relentless tide I could no longer contain. "You love me?" I spat, my words tinged with disbelief and disdain. "Then why did you betray me? Why did you turn our home into a stage for your deceit?" The questions were rhetorical, driven by the need to vent my hurt rather than seek answers. Her face, streaked with tears, was a canvas of regret. She opened her mouth to speak, to offer excuses or explanations, but I could see the futility of it all. Words would not mend the wounds she'd inflicted, nor would they erase the images burned into my mind. The silence stretched, punctuated only by her choked sobs. I turned away, unable to bear the sight of her brokenness, knowing that my own reflection was no less fractured. How had we come to this point, caught in a web of lies and deceit? Lydia's voice, small and broken, pulled me back. "Can you ever forgive me?" she asked, the hope in her tone a fragile thing. I paused, the question sinking into the depths of my heart where forgiveness had once dwelled. Could I forgive? Could I find the strength to rebuild what had been so carelessly destroyed? The answers eluded me, lost in the chaos of emotions that raged within. "I don't know," I admitted, the honesty of my response cutting through the facade of strength I'd maintained. "I don't know if I can ever forgive this." Her eyes closed, the weight of my words landing with a finality that seemed to echo through the study. The clock ticked on, a reminder of time and opportunities lost, of choices that couldn't be undone. In the end, it was that ticking that propelled me forward, away from the remnants of our past. I stood, the evidence now a testament to what had been, and what would never be again. As I turned to leave, Lydia's voice, a whisper laced with sorrow, followed me. "I'm sorry, Jack." I paused at the door, the words lingering in the air like a benediction for a love now laid to rest. Without turning, I acknowledged her apology, knowing it was both too late and, perhaps, a beginning. The path forward was obscured by shadows and uncertainty, but with each step away from the study, I felt a sliver of clarity, a notion that redemption might still be possible, somewhere beyond the wreckage of our shared history. In the aftermath of our confrontation, I found myself adrift in a sea of emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness, and an inexplicable sense of liberation. The realization that my life was no longer bound by the chains of deceit was both terrifying and oddly exhilarating. Lydia's apology, though genuine, had been a mere whisper against the torrent of pain that had crashed through my soul. But now, the path of vengeance lay clear before me, illuminated by the truth I had unearthed. Determined to reclaim my life from the clutches of betrayal, I reached out to Sarah, a trusted colleague from work. Sarah was more than just an ally. She was a confidant who had stood by me when the foundations of my world began to crumble. Her astute mind and sharp technological skills were exactly what I needed to set my plan into motion. As I sat across from Sarah in a dimly lit cafe, the world outside moved in a blur of color and sound, unaware of the seismic shifts that were occurring in my personal life. The warmth of the coffee mug seeped into my hands, grounding me as I revealed the depths of Richard's treachery, the betrayal that had seeped into every corner of my existence. Sarah listened intently, her eyes narrowing with each revelation. Her empathy was palpable, her anger on my behalf a balm to my wounded pride. "Jack," she said, her voice resolute, "if you want to do this, I'm with you every step of the way." I nodded, grateful for her unwavering support. Together, we spent countless hours piecing together every scrap of evidence, every digital trace that Richard had left behind. His financial records, usually impenetrable, were a treasure trove of secrets that Sarah expertly decoded, revealing a network of illicit dealings and hidden transactions. In the dim glow of Sarah's computer screen, we crafted a plan, a meticulous blueprint for Richard's downfall, one that would strip him of his power and lay bare the duplicity that he had reveled in. It was not just about personal vengeance anymore. It was about justice, about ensuring that others would not fall victim to his manipulations. Alongside Sarah's invaluable assistance, I orchestrated a meeting with Richard's competitors. The setting was deliberately informal, a stark contrast to the gravity of the situation. I dropped hints of insider knowledge, whispers of Richard's misconduct that piqued their interest. The bait was set, and the trap was slowly closing around him. But the piece de resistance lay in the conference, an elaborate ruse designed to lure Richard and Lydia into the open, to expose their duplicity before the very people they had deceived. The stage was set, the players unwittingly stepping into their roles as the countdown to retribution began. On the day of the conference, the air was thick with anticipation. I watched from the periphery as Lydia and Richard arrived, their confidence unshaken, their masks firmly in place. Yet beneath their polished facades, a crack was forming, one that would soon be fractured beyond repair. As the presentation commenced, the room was filled with the rustle of papers and the murmurs of expectation. I stood at the forefront, my voice steady as I laid out the evidence. A damning sequence of events that unraveled Richard's empire thread by thread. The silence that followed was absolute, a tangible weight that settled over the room as the board absorbed the revelations. Richard's face contorted with disbelief, the reality of his predicament sinking in as Lydia's expression shattered into disbelief and despair. The boardroom, once a symbol of their power, now became the crucible of their undoing. Votes were cast, decisions made, and Richard was removed from his position, his empire crumbling under the weight of his own deceit. Lydia's reputation, once untouchable, now lay in tatters, exposed for the world to see. As I walked out of the room, the echoes of their downfall reverberating around me, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and sorrow. Justice had been served, but the cost had been high. The love I once cherished was now a hollow shadow, a memory of what once was. Yet, in its place, a new sense of liberation took root, a chance to rebuild, to forge a new path from the embers of the past. With each step I took away from the boardroom, I knew that the road to redemption was long and fraught with challenges. But armed with the truth and the strength I had discovered within myself, I was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The bonds of betrayal had been broken, and in their place, a new beginning awaited me. The boardroom, now emptied of the players who had once wielded power within its walls, stood silent, a testament to the upheaval that had just unfolded. I lingered in the shadows, allowing myself a moment to absorb the magnitude of what had transpired. The pieces of a once intricate game lay scattered, each one a casualty of the truth I had brought to light. It was a bittersweet victory, tinged with the residue of love now lost and friendships irreparably broken. As I wandered through the halls of the corporate building, the echoes of the confrontation reverberated in my mind, a haunting reminder of the paths we'd taken, paths forged in betrayal and deceit. My footsteps were steady, yet each one felt like an echo of the steps I'd taken into a new life, a life free from the shadows that had lingered for too long. The remnants of Lydia's final plea, her whispered apology, hung in the recesses of my mind. It was a haunting melody that would likely play in the background of my soul for years to come. The weight of the folder I once carried was gone, but its significance remained, a silent promise that I would never again allow deception to hold sway over my life. Richard's empire had crumbled, his influence now as hollow as the promises he'd whispered to Lydia. Yet, this was not merely a tale of their downfall, it was my own rebirth, a resurrection from the ashes of what we had once shared. As I stepped outside into the cool morning air, the city seemed unchanged, unaware of the personal revolution that had just occurred. People hurried along the sidewalks, their lives untouched by the drama I had orchestrated. Yet for me, everything was different. The air felt brisker, the sky bluer, each moment tinged with a newfound clarity. The path I had chosen was not without its shadows, but it was a path of my own making, born from the unfathomable depth of betrayal. I made my way to a nearby park, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. The city's heartbeat pulsed around me, vibrant and alive, a stark contrast to the turmoil within. I found a bench beneath the sprawling branches of an ancient oak, its leaves whispering secrets only it could know. The solitude was a balm to my raw nerves, a space to reflect on the journey that had led me here. I thought of Lydia, of the moments we had shared that were now tainted with a bittersweet hue. Her image flickered in my mind, a tapestry of memories woven with laughter and love, now unraveling with the passage of time. I realized, with a clarity that settled deep within me, that forgiveness was not for her, but for me. To truly move forward, I had to release the chains of anger and resentment, to free myself from the weight of what had been. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the city, I felt a shift within, a subtle, yet profound change. The desire for revenge had been a powerful motivator, but it was not the end of my story. It had served its purpose, guiding me through the storm, but now, standing at the edge of a new beginning, I understood that my future lay in the act of letting go. I rose from the bench, the finality of decision settling over me like a comforting shroud. The path forward was uncertain, yet the possibilities were endless. I felt the corners of my mouth lift in a faint smile, a promise to myself that I would seize the opportunities that lay ahead, unfettered by the ghosts of my past. As I began my walk back through the city, Lydia's final words echoed once more. "I'm sorry, Jack." This time, they were not a plea for absolution, but a bridge between what was lost and what could be gained. I stepped forward, one foot in front of the other, each step a declaration of my intent to live beyond the confines of betrayal, to embrace the strength I discovered along the way. The road to redemption stretched before me, not as a straight line, but as a winding journey filled with promise and surprises. And as I ventured into this new chapter, I knew that the narrative of my life would be one of resilience and growth, a testament to the power of truth and the profound liberation that came from breaking the bonds of betrayal. The world resumed its steady rhythm, indifferent to the chaos that had erupted in that boardroom. But I was no longer the same. I was a man marked by pain but also reborn from it. As I stood at the threshold of newfound freedom, I felt the weight of the past slowly dissipating, leaving room for unexpected clarity and possibility. Returning home to the quiet sanctum of my once shared space, I was greeted by the familiar comfort of silence. The walls held our past, but they no longer confined me. They were witnesses to the story of a love that had faltered, then twisted into something unrecognizable, and finally, set me on a path to reclaim my own narrative. I found myself drawn to the study, the heart of my planning, and the place where the seeds of revenge had taken root. The room was unchanged, yet its significance shifted with each breath I took. The desk, once cluttered with evidence of betrayal, now stood empty, its surfaces wiped clean, much like the slate of my life. Sitting in the worn leather chair, I allowed my thoughts to drift back to the moments of confrontation. The decisive clicks of my phone, the damning evidence laid bare. There had been no satisfaction in Lydia's cries or Richard's distress, only a muted echo of vindication. Their downfall was merely a consequence, not the redemption I had sought. I glanced at the family photo still on my desk, its frame slightly tilted but otherwise untouched. Lydia's smile, radiant and eternal, looked back at me, a reminder of the innocence that had once graced our lives. I traced the contours of the image with my fingertips, and for the first time in months, felt an unexpected tenderness. It was a part of my past I could not erase, but perhaps one I could learn to reconcile. A sharp knock on the door pulled me from my reverie. It was Sarah, her presence a stalwart reminder of the strength found in true alliances. She stepped inside, her gaze appraising as she surveyed the room's emptiness. For a moment, she said nothing, simply offering the comfort of her understanding. "You did it, Jack," she finally said, her voice a gentle caress against the raw edges of my resolve. "You've taken back your life." The truth of her words settled deep within me. I nodded, the enormity of the journey I had traversed reflected in the gratitude I felt for her unwavering support. "Thanks to you," I replied, my voice steady and sincere. "No," Sarah countered, her conviction as fierce as the loyalty she had shown. "You did this. You found the courage and the strength within yourself." Her words echoed a sentiment I had struggled to embrace. The strength had indeed been mine, an intrinsic force honed through adversity. A force that could now be directed towards healing, towards crafting a new story from the fragments of the old. As Sarah left, I felt the emptiness of the room fill with purpose. The echoes of past plans gradually faded, replaced by visions of a future unencumbered by the need for retribution. I realized then that my journey was not simply about vengeance or even redemption. It was about discovering the fortitude to forge ahead, to reclaim the narrative that had once been so recklessly altered. The shadows lengthened as evening descended, casting the room in a gentle twilight. I stood, leaving the study behind as I stepped into the living room. There, I found my phone buzzing softly on the coffee table, its screen aglow with a new message, a message from Lydia. A moment of hesitation gripped me, the weight of old emotions threatening to resurface. But curiosity won out, tempered by a newfound clarity. I opened the message, its words simple yet poignant. Asterisk, "I hope you can find peace, Jack. Take care always." Asterisk, her words were a balm, a tentative olive branch across a divide she had once widened. They spoke of remorse, of an understanding that some things, though forgiven, could never be the same. Yet, they were also an acknowledgement of the journey we had both undertaken. A journey that, despite its pain, had led to growth and change. I placed the phone aside, a quiet acceptance settling over me. The path ahead was mine to walk, a path of my own making, free from the shadows of deception. And with each step, I knew I carried with me not just the lessons learned, but the strength to embrace whatever lay beyond the horizon. As night wrapped around the city, I took a deep breath, exhaling the remnants of the past. The bonds had been broken, and in their wake, a new beginning shimmered, beckoning me forward into the vast expanse of possibilities. I was ready,